Our country currently faces a multitude of problems. 2 wars, economic difficulty, increased living costs, and an environmental crisis. In search of the causes of these glaring issues, we have come to the realization that these problems are of singular origin: our country's unhealthy addiction to fossil fuels. This is what we will prove in our documentary.
The fact that America is dependent on oil and the fact that we don't produce enough oil to support our own consumption of oil in this nation has essentially made us reliant on Middle Eastern oil to an exceptional degree. We are an importer nation. What our dependency on oil does is, in terms of, not just for the environment, has made the ideals that this nation professes to believe in at times secondary. Dependency on oil is a national security issue, that it is bad for the national security of the United States to have our nation dependent on a resource that we are unable to produce for ourselves in sufficient amount and must continually import. It gets us into, I think, very controversial, at times paradoxical, at times contradictory situations in the Middle East. What it's done to American foreign policy is that it has, even to this day, has caused the United States, to a large degree, to put issues such as human rights, democracy, free press, free government, has forced us to put all of that aside to further what I believe is the larger interest of trying to control and maintain a certain amount of stability and predictability in the Middle East to ensure that the oil being produced by these Middle Eastern countries, being refined by European and American corporations, continues to flow.
We are so dependent. I think 70% of the oil that comes in the U.S. comes from outside sources. So we're extremely dependent on countries in the world that don't like us. We thought $80 oil, it would shut down demand. It didn't. We thought $100 oil would shut down demand. It didn't seem to. It seemed to have, it went all the way to $145 a barrel before we really saw it shut down, and it shut down all over the world. If you just budgeted a social program based on $90 or $100 oil, and oil's $45, you're in trouble. Mexico's one of them. Venezuela's got a lot of social programs. Russia. Most of these countries need much higher oil prices to pay for what they've promised their people.
We need to get off fossil fuels, not just merely because it's good for the environment.
I think we've been way too wasteful of our resources, and we've emitted way too much pollution into the atmosphere and into the earth and into our water supply.
What scares me sometimes is that's not about global warming. That's an article in Fortune magazine from 1974 about climatologists now blame those recurring droughts and floods on global cooling trends. I also have then this from Washington Post, January 1907, is mankind manufacturing a new ice age for itself? And it quotes a number of prestigious scientists who now are some of the ones who believe that they were wrong then, and now that we're going towards global warming.
The Earth is much less sensitive to this than the global warming advocates would have us believe. I do not think we're in as much trouble as Al Gore and the other people have told us.
There aren't any credible naysayers. The seas are getting warmer because of the global warming. We're having more hurricanes and more powerful hurricanes. The storm windows are staying open longer.
Well, we're having increased intensity of storms. Hurricanes are stronger. They're more frequent. We're having increased rate of flooding. We're having increased heat waves. They're more frequent. Heat waves are more frequent. We're moving a store of carbon that's in what we call the lithosphere, in the rocks of the Earth. It would stay there forever, not get into the atmosphere unless people mined it. Mined it out as coal, extracted it out as oil, transported it as natural gas. When we burn any fossil fuels, it is released the carbon that was locked up in the crust of the Earth. And that carbon is released into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide.
The ramifications of it are just just staggering in how many ways and levels that global warming is impacting the planet.
If we don't do everything we can to stop the rate of growth of use of fossil fuels, many scientists are concerned that we are going to reach a tipping point where the systems of life on the planet will change so drastically that we are not going to recover. What does that look like? It looks like these heat waves with thousands of people dying. It looks like floods with thousands of people dying. It looks like the spread of tropical diseases.
Is global warming pressing? Yeah. If we don't mess with it, the money's not going to matter if our airports here in the Bay Area are under 12 feet of water.
The fact that we are currently not really developing new technologies to get us basically off this addiction that we have, basically sort of has put the position in the United States as being kind of a junkie, which kind of forces us to have a rather bad relationship with the dealer.
We have global warming. I'm certainly encouraged by Obama coming in, and one of the first things he's saying is we are relying on science. Science is a big part of what we're about.
This is good for the national security of the United States, as what it does is it relieves the United States from having to try to maintain a certain amount of discipline, control, and enforcement over the Middle East, and this has been going on since World War II.
If we can conserve water, we'll also conserve energy. Since most of our energy comes from fossil fuels at this point in time, if we conserve water, we're going to conserve fossil fuels. If we conserve fossil fuels, we're going to slow the rate of global warming. All good. All good.
The scientific community knows that in the next couple of decades, we're sort of at a Y intersection. If we don't do anything in the next decade or two, it's going to be too late.
If we can address the release of fossil fuels, if we can reduce our use of fossil fuels, if we can increase our efficiency, increase our use of non-renewables, gain energy independence, we're going to address those problems in significant ways. And if we don't, we cannot address those problems. If we do not get out of trying to control the remainder of the oil supply in the Middle East, we're doomed. Reduce our use of fossil fuels. It's the biggest thing that we can do.